Howdy guys, and welcome to the Night 4 recap of Big Brother Season 23, and this is Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. Hope y'all are all doing fantastic. Okay, Saturday night, we finally get a night that's not quite as hectic, quite as chaotic as we've seen the first three nights. Can you believe this is only night 4? A little more settled down, but let's talk about what happened not just last night, but also during the day itself, because Saturday, important day inside Big Brother, it's the veto competition, and so let's talk about that as a quick summary. First of all, the veto draw. We knew that Frenchie and Kyland and Alyssa were playing as the two nominees in the HOH, but in the draw, we also had Travis, Tiffany, and Derek X picked to compete. I heard later that apparently Alyssa got house guest choice. She picked Travis. You can always read a little bit into relationships inside the house based on who's picking who and things like that. So those are our 6 competitors. Not the best draw for Frenchie, as we're going to find out. All right, so now the competition itself. Later on, we hear that it was some type of timed competition. Sounds like one at a time. Each player had to spin a wheel. They had some kind of task that they had to do while avoiding obstacles. Really not clear until we see it on TV, but some kind of a timed task. And the winner of the veto competition, Derek X. Derek X won. Great news for him because it looked like he was a potential backdoor for Frenchie if he was available, but now he's not. So Derek X has the veto. Apparently, Alyssa was pretty close to Derek X in terms of the final times. So, you know, this is a competition. Timing, we see a lot of these types of competitions inside Big Brother throughout the season. So Derek X and Alyssa both held their own, apparently. So we've got that. Now, as I said, a bad result for Frenchie since Derek, we think, was the backdoor target. My gut feel, my opinion, if Derek X doesn't use a veto, Frenchie can at least say that he wanted another target. Man, y'all were pawns. I didn't want y'all to go home. I wanted another target. But that old Derek X, he chose not to use it. It's his fault. It's not my fault. And he's going to try to avoid getting try to solve some things and make the situation just a little bit better. If Derek X does use the veto, and I think he will, if he does use a veto, that's yet another person that gets more blood on Frenchie's hands. So it's a little tough situation for Frenchie. He's going to have a lot of people a little concerned, maybe a little irritated with him after this week. Again, a gut feel is that if Derek X does not use a veto and it stays Kyland versus Alyssa, I think Alyssa may go home. If it is used, which again I think it will be, Derek likely pulls off Kyland. Frenchie at that point likely puts up Travis, who then goes home. Travis and Kyland, now Travis and Kyland did mention Brent's name as someone that they maybe wanted to push. But since we know that Frenchie and Brent have a final 2, at least they did yesterday. Y'all know the way things go in his house, but at least yesterday they had a final 2. So if the veto is used, I do not expect Frenchie to put up Brent as the renom. But we're going to find all of that out tomorrow because Monday morning is typically the veto ceremony. And then we'll know a little more detail who actually is in line to potentially go home. Now, let's talk about it. There was a little bit of controversy having to do with the veto competition, the veto draw in particular. Apparently, after the draw, perhaps, Kyland says that he looked in the bag and that there were only 6 chips in the bag itself. Not enough chips to cover all the house guests that are in the house. I don't know anything about that, you know, what is or anything. But the house guests talked about that, and they're thinking that maybe America had some kind of vote going on that removed some house guest chips from the bag so they couldn't compete in veto, something along those lines. It's interesting to see how that thing falls out, but just as a personal observation, during my season, we questioned if everyone's chips were inside the veto bag because Holly and Nicole were never getting picked for veto competitions. So on at least 2 separate occasions, we had people who quickly looked through the chips and their names were there. Everyone's names were there just as they were supposed to be. So there was absolutely no hanky-panky going on during our season. So I don't know what to make of Kyland's allegation, observation, but we'll see what happens with that. Now, something else that's going on. Frankie Frankie talks to Derek X, and at one point they're trying to hash things out. They talk up in the HOH room for hours on end, and there's some talk about that maybe there was some misunderstanding going on. We've kind of heard that conversation before with other people, but Frenchie and Derek X talk a lot and sounds like they're trying to smooth things over. At one point, Frenchie actually is talking about, you know, who, if you use a veto, I got to figure out who I'm going to put up. And he tells Derek X he's going to bring up every house guest and ask them who they think should go up on the block against Alyssa, with the assumption that Derek X pulls Kyland off. And then Frenchie's just going to go with whatever the majority wants. I get it. He's trying to avoid getting any more blood on his hands. I think it may be a little too late at this point in time. He just needs to make, if the veto is used, Frenchie just needs to make a decision, make the call that benefits his game the most, and just move on. And he's got, you know, next week to try to solve things out, resolve some things and all that. But that was his plan. Kyland tells Tiffany that, now this was interesting. Kyland's talking to Tiffany. He tells her that he wants to convince Derek X that if the veto is used, Sarah Beth is going to be Frenchie's renomination. Now, why Sarah Beth? What would the purpose be? Because Sarah Beth and Christian are on the same team. I think Team Kings. Yeah, they're on Team Kings. And so he's going to try to convince Derek X that Frenchie still wants to do anything possible to hurt Christian. So he'll put someone else up on Christian's team as a replacement. The idea is that they want Derek X to think someone like Sarah Beth is going to go on the block and not Travis, because I think Travis and Derek X have a little tighter relationship than Derek X and Sarah Beth, for example. So that's what Kyland's going to try to push. Now, I don't think that if Alyssa is still on the block, that Frenchie is putting another woman up against Alyssa. I just don't see two women week one I'm going home. I don't think he's going to do that. But Kyland's pushing that narrative, or says he's going to push it, and it may work. Derek X actually said once or twice last night, he didn't seem really aware that if he used the veto, that he himself is safe, that the veto owner can't be put on the block. Now, is that true? Does Derek X really not quite understand how the veto works? Or is he just playing dumb a little bit just to make himself seem a little less of a threat? I kind of think it's the latter. I think he knows more than he's letting on. But he also has told people that he's only watched a couple of seasons, I think, and a little more fresh to the game. So he's trying to play that role, I think. But because of that, Kyland does think that maybe he can convince Derek X that Travis isn't a threat of going up if he uses a veto. We'll see if that works out. Interesting approach. We had a lot of time last night where Frenchie is going into the various bedrooms, trying to put shaving cream onto people's hands, onto their feet. Yeah, I think he got Derek. I don't even remember who all he got. He's trying to get a lot of people, some more successful than others, but trying to have a little fun in the house. I got to say, anything you can do to relieve some of the stress in there with some pranks and things like that, usually not a bad thing. But sometimes you got to be careful sometimes with it as well. You got to make sure the people are receptive that you're doing the pranks on. But Frenchie trying to play prank, trying to have a little fun in the house, so go for it. I would create some fun, because it's been stressful so far, Frenchie, so do what you can. Now, with all that being said, this is season 23. Well, we've got to have some alliance news, right? You can't have a day without changes or creations of alliances. And sure enough, we've got another alliance that's been formed in the house. We couldn't go more than 24 hours, right? And by the end of the season, we're going to have several hundred alliances that have been formed, I think. But we do have another alliance. This one's a little bit unique because it is a all-girls alliance. I'm not the least bit surprised. I know Claire had talked about wanting to form one. We had one during my season. They aren't always rarely are they very successful. We'll see how this season's go. So, all-girls alliance consists of Azah, Brittany, Tiffany, and Claire. Now, I got to say, I think these are pretty smart, game player, strategic women. If there's ever a year in an girls alliance that could work, these may be the ones that can make it happen. So we'll find out. They do have a name. They're calling themselves the Sirens. So Sirens, let's see how you do this season. A lot of alliances that you're competing with, but let's see how you gals do. I'm very curious to see how it works out. So there you go, guys. Again, not quite as much pandemonium and chaos as we've seen on some other nights. A little more quiet until we actually see if the veto's being used or not. And then it'll start all over again. The other thing that did happen, or is happening, they did get the backyard back, so they're very excited about that. after the POV competition. And I understand that at some point today, they're doing the backyard swimsuit shots, which is always kind of fun. So they'll get to do that. Forget about the game for just a little bit. And then the veto competition or veto ceremony tomorrow, and then let the campaigning begin. Guys, I hope y'all have a fantastic weekend. We'll see what happens tonight, and I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Cheers, my friends. SKD 143. Y'all have a great one.